Good morning. Welcome to the Trent England Show. Glad to have you here with us as we wrap up this, what is it, the third week of the Oklahoma State legislative session. It seems like it's been going on forever because of the second special session and the first special session and on and on and on. But we're here, and yesterday was cutoff day. If you missed the show yesterday, you should go back and watch the show yesterday. We've been talking about specific pieces of legislation this week. I have proof after something that happened yesterday, actually after just thinking about something that happened yesterday, I have proof today that for many school choice opponents, it's not actually about the money. I'm going to prove that to you today. It's not about the money. It's not about preserving money for public schools. It's actually about forcing kids. It is about depriving people of choice. It's about violating parental rights. I can prove it to you. I'm going to prove it to you today in just a couple of minutes. I want to hit on a couple of stories here real quick as we get going. How do we appreciate freedom? What helps us appreciate freedom here in the great United States of America? One of the things it does is looking at the way freedom is abused around the rest of the world. 35 women in Iran yesterday were arrested. What was their crime? Their crime was they were trying to go see a soccer game. And women in Iran are not allowed to go see soccer games, and so 35 women were arrested. Okay, so put that in your file there the next time somebody says that things are so bad here in the United States of America. And the presidential election, this is fascinating to me. I don't know exactly what this means. Just be honest with you. I have some suspicions, but the presidential election in Venezuela has been postponed. It was supposed to take place on the 22nd of April, and it has been pushed back about a month in Venezuela. I suspect that what that means is that the Chavista forces of Nicolas Maduro were not completely sure of their ability to steal that election. But, I mean, who knows? That's probably what that means. Okay. We have a couple more stories, and then we're going to get to education right here in the great state of Oklahoma. The Trump administration and tariffs. I'm sorry. I have to talk about this. Tariffs are almost always bad policy. Well, let me say this. Let me give you two caveats here at the beginning. I posted one caveat yesterday on Facebook. I shared some of my thoughts. If you don't follow the Trent England Show Facebook page, you should do that. I share some of my own thoughts there. And here's what I said about tariffs. One caveat. Look, if you were going to set up a tax system for the United States, you can't run a government without revenue. If you're going to set up a revenue system for the United States and say, look, let's get rid of income taxes and let's just have a low uniform tariff on all imports into the United States, that's one way to collect government revenue. If you're doing it for revenue, if it's low, if it's uniform, I've always wondered whether that's a better way than income taxes domestically, but it's still a tax on who? American consumers. It's a tax on American consumers. I'll never forget, I was in high school. We had an exchange student from Britain. We were talking about their socialized medical system, the National Health Service in Britain, and he told me it was free. And I said, come on now. You can't possibly believe that. It's not free. You pay for it in taxes. He said, that's not true. We don't. I said, well, where does the money come from? He said, well, I think we tax our imports and exports. And I sort of shrugged my shoulders and decided that it wasn't worth it to explain to him that when you tax imports, you're taxing the people in your country who buy the imports. And when you tax exports, you're taxing the people in your country who produce the exports. That's where the money comes from in Britain, to the extent that he was even correct about that. Tariffs are taxes on domestic consumers. Right, so with the one caveat, I'm going to give you another, but with the one caveat that, I mean, look, if we were going to set up a federal revenue system based on low uniform tariffs, yeah, fine. Right, but that's not what this is. This is tariffs as trade policy. Now, let me give you caveat number two. Caveat number two is actually the nominal reason, the supposed reason why the president has the power to do what Donald Trump is going to do with aluminum and steel imports. If you haven't, you've probably seen this already, right? He's going to put tariffs of 10% on aluminum imports, 25% on steel imports. These are big tariffs. on those imports, big charges. So the power comes from the idea that certain products are a military necessity, certain things we just have to have so that we can protect our national defense here in the United States of America. In a country as big and as resource rich as the United States, there are actually very few things like that. Right? And if we have an economy that's operating and flourishing, where government is minimizing the barriers to entry for people, you're very rarely going to have a real critical resource that you need to prop up with tariffs. And pretty much every use of this tariff policy has always been about crony capitalism, by the way. It's always been crony capitalism. It's always been politics, even though the justification is defense. So we shouldn't, we certainly shouldn't just, just swig that Kool-Aid down. Right, because it's almost always about something else, even though the power is linked to national defense. But I'll throw that out as a second caveat. But why are tariffs almost always bad policy? They're always bad trade policy, and here's why. Right, the list of winners is very short. Who's on the list of winners with Trump's trade policy? Well, people who are in the United States who work in the production of steel and aluminum, they're going to be winners. Them and them only. Right? The companies, the workers at those companies, they're the only winners. Who are the losers? Every American who consumes directly or indirectly products made with aluminum and products made with steel, because you've made the market smaller, you've made the market less competitive, you've guaranteed that prices are going to go up because you've raised the prices on the foreign goods, so you're either, if you're still buying the foreign goods, you're going to pay higher prices, and domestic producers get to have their foreign competition shackled, right? Get to have their foreign competition's prices artificially inflated, so they get to inflate their prices too. So and who is that? Who's on that list? You're on that list. I guarantee you're on that list. I'm on that list. Even the Americans who work for steel and aluminum manufacturers are on that list, right? Now, they might net be better off, but every American is going to pay higher prices for products made of aluminum and steel, and for things that come from products made of aluminum and steel. It's bad for the natural gas industry. It's bad for the oil industry right here in Oklahoma, because they use a lot of steel. They use some aluminum. They're going to pay higher prices. That's a tax on them. It's a tax on every single American. Every single American is worse off because of these tariffs. But that's not the end of the lose, and that's why markets were down. That's why people, people in business look at this and they say, overall, this is a net drain on the economy. Who else loses? I'll throw this out there, even though I think sadly some immoral people sort of see this as a win in their own kind of perverted worldview. But there are people in the rest of the world who are the losers from this, right? And they tend to be much poorer than Americans, but there are people who work in the steel industries and the aluminum industries in other countries, and their market has just shrank or is about to shrink, right? Their future prospects are dimming a little bit because of this policy. And again, they're already poorer than the average American. A lot of them are a lot poorer than the average American. And look, I think that the basis of American policy should be what's good for America. But I certainly think that a policy that hurts Americans and that hurts people overseas just to help a very, very small group of Americans, I think that's obviously bad policy. These tariffs are ridiculous. I'll throw up there the one story I saw yesterday on trade. You know who the biggest exporter of tarantulas is? It used to be Mexico. Now it's Canada. You know why? Because Canada figured it. They've got some producers of tarantulas, some tarantula breeders in Canada, who are more efficient than tarantula breeders in Mexico, and the world supply of tarantulas is benefited by free trade in tarantulas. Okay. So look, trade is good. If you like tarantulas, if you like anything made from steel or aluminum, trade is good. Okay. One more. What do we have here? One more story, and then we're going to get to education. I told you I'm going to prove that the people who say that they oppose school choice just because they're concerned about school budgets are lying. They're lying. By the way, I used this word on social media yesterday, and they said, that's ad hominem. That's beneath you. I said, no, it'd be beneath me to pretend like you're telling the truth. They're liars, and I'm going to explain why in just a minute. But I've got to get to one more story. This undercuts the honesty of, well, but maybe they just didn't know. I'm always willing to accept that, people may not be lying, they may just be ignorant. I don't believe it about the school choice opponents, but it may be true of people like Scott Inman, people like Scott Walke, who opposed Medicaid audits in the last session of the Oklahoma legislature. This bill is back this year. Hopefully this bill passes. What is it about? Well, you can pull up the story there. It's about exactly what happened in Queens, New York. This is perhaps one of the most extreme examples of this, a wealthy woman swindling $70,000 from Medicaid. What is Medicaid? Medicaid is a program that violates the Constitution, but we're not going to talk about that today. Medicaid is a program where the federal government says, we're going to take a whole bunch of money in federal taxes, we're going to borrow tons of money to run this program, and then we're going to set up a safety net for people who are poor and either elderly. I mean, originally it was people who were elderly, people who were children, and people who were disabled, and were also, they're in one of those three categories, and they're also very poor. This is the way the program was originally set up, and it's going to be administered by the states. So the federal government sends some money to the states have to match some of that money, the states have to run the program, and the federal government sets the parameters. So it's a program designed to avoid representative government, designed to prevent you from having control in elections, because it's partly federal, it's partly state. Most of the money is federal, most of the administration is state. Makes it very hard for you to hold anybody accountable. It's designed to do that. That's on purpose. But look, setting all that aside, right? The state has some powers. One power the state of Oklahoma has that it has not exercised is to look at who's signed up for Medicaid and really make sure that they're eligible, that they're not fraudsters, that they're not cheating the program and taking resources away from people who really are needy, like this lady, what's her name? Galet Levy, or Levi, a 37-year-old woman in New York who, I mean, she's wealthy. She's got over $1 million in the bank, and she is stealing money. She was stealing money. Now she's going to go to trial and probably going to go to prison. She was stealing money from the Medicaid system. And other states have looked into this. Arkansas, right next door, they said, we're going to do better audits. We're going to do better checks, because we've seen a lot of growth in our Medicaid program, and we're just not sure we have that many people who are actually that poor. And we recognize that we haven't been doing very good checks in the past. And so they implemented that in Arkansas, and they actually saw their welfare rolls, their Medicaid, medical welfare rolls decline in Arkansas. That's going to save real money. State tax dollars, federal tax dollars. It's going to allow the people who administer Medicaid in Arkansas to focus their time and efforts on people who really, truly need the program, not on people who are scammers, not on people like this lady in New York. And so far, we have not done that in Oklahoma. And you know why? You know what the Scott Walkies and the other liberal legislators in the Oklahoma State House of Representatives said? They said it's mean to poor people to have better checks on the program. And they also said it would be too expensive, and they said we do it already. I'm always curious when I hear that. Well, this would be too expensive, and we actually do it already. Those two things can't both be true. You know that. I don't even have to say that. But look, one more piece of evidence. I mean, this is common sense public policy in Oklahoma. We should pass Medicaid audits. Some people call it Stop the Scam. We should pass that legislation right now. And a big thanks to Representative Elise Hall, who has been leading on that issue here in the great state of Oklahoma. Thank you, Representative Hall, for your leadership on that issue. Okay, education. First of all, I want to run an interview. I was able to talk with a gentleman here in the Oklahoma City metro area who runs a Christian school, and we were talking about his school and also talking about scholarships, this scholarship tax credit program. And this is the context in which I had this aha moment when I said, wait a second, these people don't care about, the opponents of these programs, they don't care about the money. They care about something else. They pretend they care about the money, but I can prove that that's not what it's all about. But first of all, let's run the clip, my interview from yesterday with the head of school, the headmaster over at Christian Heritage Academy, Josh Bullard. Here we go. So I'm here with Josh Bullard. He is the headmaster at Christian Heritage Academy, one of the Oklahoma City area's larger private schools, I think. Josh, tell me, what is CHA?
Christian Heritage Academy, Trent, is a pre-K through 12th grade private Christian school in Dale City, Oklahoma. We have a little over 600 students, about 620 students. We're in our 46th year of being a school here in Oklahoma City. Have a great group of families. Children who come to the school. We're thankful for what God's given us to do. Our vision at CHA, in a nutshell, is to train American Christian leaders for every sphere of society. I won't expand on that, but that's what we do. That's who we are.
That is exciting, and obviously, you know, some people are going to say, well, wait a second, that's not for everybody. I think one thing that infects a lot of our education conversation is this quest for the one-size-fits-all model. I gather you don't claim that about Christian Heritage Academy.
You're exactly right, Trent. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and tell you that what we do, and I would love for you to come see it, when we have families investigate the possibility of enrolling their children at CHA, I meet those families. I say, you know, how did you know about Christian Heritage Academy? Why are you interested in having your child here at this school? And then in the midst of that conversation, I ask where they live, and then I say, you know, there are some other really good schools in the Oklahoma City area. And then I actually mentioned some other private non-religious schools, some private Christian schools. We have a number of outstanding Catholic schools in the area, and we say, you know, we live in Del City. You really should investigate all the options, and then I tell them, we will pray for you, and we trust that God will bring those children to CHA, that this is a good fit for your family, and we understand it's not a good fit for everybody. We even go so far as to say, if this is where God wants you, we would love to have you, and if not, you really don't want us, and we really don't want you, because we want a good fit for your children.
Yeah. So you're a part of the Opportunity Scholarship Fund, these tax credit scholarships that Oklahoma allows. What are these, and why do you participate?
First of all, they are dollars given by individuals and corporations to the Opportunity Scholarship Fund, a standalone independent 501c3. When those individuals give those dollars to the OSF, they designate them for the school of their choice. Over 60 schools in the state of Oklahoma participate in the OSF. So those families can designate their dollars for Christian Heritage Academy, and then the school gets to have individuals apply for those scholarships, and we have dollars available given to us by individuals through the OSF that we can grant to needy families who want to have their children at Christian Heritage Academy.
So, you know, one of the stereotypes of private education is that it's just for the wealthy. I mean, obviously this program seems designed to break down that stereotype a little bit. Do you see that actually happening at your school?
Well, without a doubt, and actually the stereotype is not completely undeserved. It does cost $8,000 to go to Christian Heritage Academy, and for a variety of other private schools in the Oklahoma City area, that varies to double that to a fraction of that. So because parents have to pay for that education, there is some misconception that it's only for the wealthy. But what we've been able to do, granted largely granted to the Opportunity Scholarship Fund, is we now have the opportunity to provide scholarships to families who are not able to afford $8,000 per child per year. So it really has helped us broaden our reach and help train students to be American Christian leaders that otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity, and the parents really do want that opportunity for their children.
Just give us a glimpse real quick here as we wrap up. What kind of families access Christian Heritage Academy because of these scholarships?
It's families in a nutshell who do not have the financial means to be able to do that, and that's a variety of families. Sometimes that's widows. We have several widows in our school who have lost their primary wage earner in the family. That mother can have her children at CHA because we have scholarships available. We have single parents, both single fathers and single mothers, for a variety of reasons. Again, those individuals may not have the funds to send their child or children to CHA. We have some families that are traditional two-wage earner families. They may have multiple children, though, and they can't afford to have all 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those children at CHA. So it really is a wide variety, but the bottom line is the commonality is it's families who need help, financial help, to afford the tuition and who qualify to receive that help.
Josh Bullard, headmaster at Christian Heritage Academy, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Trent. Appreciate it.
So that's just one glimpse of one school that is meeting the needs of some kids, right? Doesn't claim to meet the needs of all kids. And this is why I had this back and forth yesterday. It's so fascinating, so eye-opening on social media with some of the opponents of school choice. And they really, I mean, they say things like, well, you know, that's just for the few. We need to help all kids. Why can't we do things to help all kids? They really have this belief that, you know, I was kind of making fun of them a little bit. I was, you know, quoting from Tolkien, you know, one ring to rule them all and in the darkness bind them, right? I mean, this idea that, well, we can find the one system that is just going to be the right way for everybody. One of these groups is called, they call themselves Pastors for OK Kids, and I find it fascinating to the extent that the word OK, I mean, of course, they're using that to try to signify Oklahoma, but it's more honest if you think about it the other way, right? If, to the extent that OK is a synonym for average, that's what they are. They're supporters of average kids, kids at the middle of the bell curve, whose needs are met in public schools. And they kept saying, you hate public schools, you hate, and I don't hate public schools. They work wonderfully for a lot of kids, for the majority of kids, right? They work at least pretty good. I'm concerned about kids at the ends, kids at the extremes, kids who aren't okay right now, kids who aren't average, right? Kids who need something like Christian Heritage Academy can offer, or Mission Academy, which is the sober high school, or the program that we have here in Oklahoma City, Positive Tomorrows, for kids whose families are homeless, or programs like Trinity School for kids who have learning disabilities, right? I'm interested in those kids. Right? The programs that, you know, maybe it's not an easily identifiable group of kids, but it's just kids who have some different kind of thing that they want to do or that they need to be able to do, right? Why not allow diversity in schools? These opponents of school choice are against that. But what they say is, and this is what they said yesterday, and this it's going to set the light bulb off in my mind. They said, you know, this is taking money. They were talking specifically about scholarship tax credits. They said this takes money away from public education. And that's not exactly true. It's actually mostly not true. Let me explain, and this proves so much about who these people are and what they're really about. Because, look, the scholarship tax credits, like any other tax credit program, takes money from general revenue. It doesn't take money specifically from schools. Right now, schools get some money from general revenue, so obviously if you say, well, if you donate to that scholarship fund, we're going to give you a tax credit, that slightly diminishes, the cap is $5 million on all this, right? So it slightly diminishes the amount of general revenue, and it's possible that that could slightly diminish the amount of revenue that goes to public schools. It could also be entirely taken from other programs, right? And I thought, wait a second, why don't you help me? And I asked them this question, and crickets. No response. They disappear. I asked them this question. I said, why don't you help me get rid of the Hollywood handout, the film tax credit? That used to be $5 million. Now it's $4 million. That's progress, but not nearly far enough. It should go to zero, right? That's also money out of the general revenue fund, right? Think about this. Here's what exposes these people. Right? You have two tax credit programs. You have two economic analyses of these tax credit programs, by the way. The film incentive, the economic analysis of the film incentive program said it does not work. Explicitly said it does not work, 13 cents back on the dollar, the program fails. The economic analysis done by economists at the university, at Oklahoma City University, said the program works. Said that the program actually returns generates a positive return for the state of Oklahoma, right? So two programs, about the same amount, $4 million, $5 million, right? One is a failure, one is a success. They both take money from the same place. What do the opponents of school choice focus on? Only the program that benefits kids. They're not against the other program. Why is that, right? It's because when they say it's about the money, when they say it's about protecting public school budgets, they're not telling you the truth. They're saying something that's not true. Or to put it another way, they're telling a lie, right? Because they're not out there trying to scrape up all the money they can find for public schools, right? They're not saying we're against this just the same way we're against that. They're only against the programs that open doors and allow parents to choose other options. It's not about the money, it's about control. Let me say that again. For school choice opponents, it's not about the money, it's about control. How else do we know that? Well, I mean, look, that is the most powerful piece of evidence, right? They never, and every time I get in a debate with them and they start talking about money, I always throw this out. Help us with these other things, right? Why can't we agree on Medicaid audits? Why can't we agree on Hollywood handouts? Why don't you ever help save money from any other area in the budget? Frankly, at the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, usually when we advance these reforms, we're also saying, Let's make this reform, save this money, and give teachers a raise, because we understand that a lot of Oklahoma teachers should get a raise, right? We believe in that. We lobby. I mean, even when these other groups don't support teacher raises at the Capitol, which sometimes happens, because if it's not tied to a tax increase, if it's tied to spending cuts in other areas, they go crickets. They go silent. They don't do anything. They don't lift a finger. It's not about the money. It's about control. And the other way to prove that, this gets wonkier, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm a wonky guy. The other way to do that is to look back at who their intellectual forebears are and see what all this is really about. John Dewey is the father of modern government-run education. And what does he say in this book? The other question I asked them, they kept throwing these Milton Friedman quotes at me. And I finally said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was butting into your debate with Milton Friedman. I thought he was dead. I thought you were debating with me, but if you want to have this little side conversation, go knock yourself out. I'm not Milton Friedman. I don't, that's silliness, right? But look, the point here is these schools were set up with a certain perspective, with a certain point of view, right? Now, they may operate that way or they may not, but most of the defenders, most of those who want to lock kids in this system want to do it, I think, for pretty much the same reasons as John Dewey. And as he explained, what I asked them about Milton Friedman, I said, so which of his books have you read? And again, they go crickets. They just disappear. It's social media, right? So you can't force them to answer your questions. They just go, because they haven't read anything. They haven't read this. They haven't read Milton Friedman. Here on this program, I'm not bragging. This is just the reality. We've read it all, right? I mean, we've read both sides, right? And when you read this, when you read about the ideology that's behind public school, one of the things that John Dewey says right toward the end of this book is so revealing. And that is that a part of the agenda of, not just operating schools, right, but of pushing people into these schools, requiring them to be in these schools. There actually had to be a Supreme Court case back in the, I think it was back in the 1920s. Somebody was reminding me of this on social media the other day, some very intelligent viewer of ours, about Pierce versus Society of Sisters. It actually took a Supreme Court case to say that government could not force people into these schools and forcibly shut down other educational avenues, other educational programs for kids. John Dewey says part of the purpose is to make sure that people know that they're never really full adults, right? They're never really full citizens. To break down the idea, the 19th century idea, the 18th century idea, the Thomas Jefferson idea of education was, you take these young people and you give them a good, robust education. Never forget that the educational debate between Franklin and Jefferson was whether it was essential to learn Greek before you learned Latin, right? They debated educational policy and curriculum back then, and that was the debate, right? Is it essential that we teach Greek first, or can you teach Latin first, right? These are the, now we debate whether you should make sure that kids can learn to read by the time they're in 4th grade. John Dewey said, so the idea was you're going to raise people up, you're going to make them into citizens who can live and operate in a self-governing society, who can govern themselves, and because they can govern themselves, they can be trusted to vote and participate in a republic. John Dewey says, that's not true. That's not the way it works. Most people are never going to be adults in that sense, citizens in that sense. They always need to be subjects of government, and we need an education system that makes sure that they know that they know that they're never fully developed, this is actually, we use the phrase lifetime learner in a good way today, but he used it in another way. I mean, he used it in the sense that people need to understand that they should always be sitting there at the feet of their betters, of the progressives, of the elites in government and in academia, and be under their control. And we should design, John Dewey says, we should design an educational system that prevents people from getting above their station, right? In a way, it's a very old school, if I can coin the phrase, way of thinking, sort of dragging American society back to the pre-revolution way of thinking of things, that we just need to sit back and allow our betters to govern us. But look, I mean, this is at least a part of the reason why some people they don't just want to keep the money in the public system. They want to slam the door. They want to keep people in that system. It's not about money, it's about control. They want control. And all this is strong evidence that that is indeed the case. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for watching this week. We're going to be back next week. We'll be talking about legislation. We're going to have some experts on the show. We're going to have some legislators, I think, on the show next week. It's going to be a great week on the Trent England Show. Please share and subscribe on iTunes. Thanks for watching.